Hey, I'm Kelly, and this is Personal Politics. Today, I want to talk about how to have tough conversations that tend to get pretty personal. Because we all have friends, coworkers, family, we all have that one uncle, and we want to keep them, but we're also collectively experiencing this very important time of social reckoning. That means we have to have some tough conversations, some more frequently than others. Justin Trudeau, sorry, I just had a cough. I want to tell you about calling out's younger sibling calling in, how you can use it in your day-to-day life, and how to respond to being called in or called out. And I have a quick crash course on why these conversations feel so difficult. This is Personal Politics, where I get up close and personal with ideas that spark change. So before you call someone in or spark a tough conversation, it's important to check in first with yourself and then ask them if it's a good time for it. It's important to make sure that everybody has time, energy, and bandwidth to really get into it. Consent comes first. So calling in. Calling in is to calling out like Shawn Mendes is to Justin Bieber. One is softer and nicer, yet they both have their time and place. Sorry, Justin. Really just roasting the Justins in this. Calling in is calling out without the accusation. Now, many activists say that calling in is ideal for when someone in your community is being problematic, but I like to think that you can use this technique whenever you feel it's possible. So here's how you call someone in. Ask them a question to gauge at what stage of learning they might be at. Something like, what did you mean by that? It could be just a slip up, or it could be intentional. You don't really know until you ask. Then put a little bit of pressure to help them think more critically about what they've said. Something like, would you say that to someone you're friends with? Or how would you feel if someone said that about you? See how they respond. If they're engaging and seem interested in continuing the conversation, that means they're still within their comfort zone. If you sense they're uncomfortable, that's a sign that they've learned something and might need time to process that on their own. If they're still comfortable and you're still comfortable, keep along that line of light pressure while also adding information and anecdotes. Make lots of room for feelings and be sure to pay particular attention to them. Make sure to notice and attempt to sort through any feelings that may arise between both parties. If either of you need a break to process or just to stop, use an emergency escape plan. I like to say something like, something to think about, and then find a way to change the conversation. Sometimes one does not have the emotional energy to talk about the root issue, especially when these problematic and hurtful things happen regularly. I, for one, can say that when someone is saying something racist, sexist, or biphobic to me, I have a hard time being nice, let alone sparking a dialogue about it. Some good examples, like when Katherine Heigl in Grey's Anatomy assumes Sandra Oh speaks Mandarin when really she's Korean and in the show grew up in Beverly Hills. A great way to call Katherine Heigl into that conversation would be to say, hey, why did you assume that I spoke Mandarin? That didn't make me feel great. Did you know I'm actually Korean? And I grew up in Beverly Hills. This leads me to this. Everyone is also on their own journey of developing a relationship with their own identity. For marginalized folks, that often leads to internalized racism or sexism, etc. And that is really sensitive stuff, because unfortunately there's no high school course in like, why do I default to hating myself? So it's super important to be very compassionate when specifically addressing someone's identity. Like when I was 12 and someone shouted to me that I'm Asian and I was like, I'm what? Anyways, thinking about you, Lucas from grade 7 French class. Everyone goes on pretty intense journeys of learning about social issues, and at any given time, we can all be at different places on that journey. This can make tough conversations even tougher. And everyone has to develop their relationship to race eventually. Yes, even you white people. The difference is, for white folks, processing and understanding race doesn't forcefully happen at a young age or very frequently. I highly recommend reading this chart on the stages of racial identity development. The other side of this is, how does one respond to being called in or called out? An awesome resource I found is this slideshow by Black Lives Matter educator Marie Beach. I'll link that below, but here's the highlight. Shift your thinking. They aren't fighting me, they're helping me fight racism. We have a common enemy and a common goal. I love this reframing because no matter how cool and smart we think we are, when these tough interactions happen, it all feels so personal for everyone involved. Because trauma and being told you're wrong or ignorant are pretty personal, but in the grand scheme of things, we're all just trying to be better to each other. Well, that's what I tell myself anyway. It's unfortunately not always the case. We gotta try though. Some key takeaways: everyone is at a different stage of learning, and everyone has different amounts of emotional energy to help others learn. Don't feel guilty for having less patience or emotional energy. And on the flip side, don't be upset if someone doesn't always have the energy to help you learn. Calling out definitely has its time and place. But when you can, questions that call people into the conversation can go much further. And always have an escape route ready if things get a little too intense. Your well-being is important too. So if you like this video, be sure to subscribe to stay up to date. This is Personal Politics. Tell me what you think of calling in the comments below, or tell me what you want a future episode to be. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.